just while you're still talking about the fleece, we got lots of questions around sizing for the fleece.
Yes.
So I thought maybe we should touch on it because there's been a few questions coming through, like does it stretch for a cloth nappy? What's the neckline stretch? All that kind of stuff. So and I know that there was quite a few in the Facebook event, quite a few sizing questions come through as well. So just like thinking about the stretch in it, should they upsize? Are they true to size? All that kind of stuff.
Why don't you give us
Yeah,
the
I know,
nerdy,
the nerdy, geeky side of it.
The standard thing.
So all our fits are based on the Australian standard. So a little background on that standard. It's based, so say for a size 1, an age 1, size 1, is for a 1.5-year-old. So for an average sized child, an average sized 1-year-old, when you a 1-year-old, you would pop them in at 1 and it might be a bit big. At 1.5, it would be your perfect fit, and then towards the time that they're getting towards their 2nd birthday, it would start to get a bit snug, but it would still fit for an average sized child. So that's kind of how the standard works. So other brands don't necessarily sort of label in the same way, but we're all about standards here and making sure that it conforms. So,
and it is part of the nightwear standard that, you know, why garments have the fire label, and, you know, there's very strict rules around the fit of garments, and that nightwear standard references the Australian sizing standard for children's wear, and so they do work hand in hand, which is why you often get a lot of nightwear has the height and the average, and that's the average or the maximum.
That's kind of like the maximum.
Middle.
Well, it sort of gets a bit complicated because before 1-year-old, it's done by mass, and once you get to 1, it's not done by mass anymore. So I know. So it just kind of gets a bit more complicated.
Okay. But on average, if we're saying it's a size 1, start wearing it when you're 1.
Yes.
Finish wearing it when you're 2.
Yes.
It'll fit you best at around 1.5. But that is based on across Australia, which New Zealand uses Australian standards if we don't have one. That's an average. So if you think of like a bell curve, probably fits for most things. You know, that's probably applies to a couple of standard deviations. Get into my maths. But you know, sort of average probably fits about 50% of the population well, and you'll know if your child is smaller than average or bigger than average, and so you might need to adjust that a little bit.
And it also depends on, your child might not be 1 at the start of winter, so you know, your child might be 1.5 above average, so you're going to buy a 2, and you would then possibly get a bit more sort of out of it depending on when your child's born as well. So I was going to think of something and it's gone from my mind.
So I think just be confident that our sizing is based on averages, and it's been based on this Australian standard. So Amanda didn't just pick the sizing out of nowhere. She spent many days and weeks pouring over that hideous document of the standard.
Oh, that's the other thing. And one thing to note as well is that once your child reaches 2, the growth sort of tapers off dramatically. So you kind of get another growth spurt around 4, 5, and then again, sort of girls and boys are different. So girls tend to get another growth spurt around 8 or 9, like pre-puberty, and then boys sort of generally go a little bit later. So there's a lot of rapid growth in children to the first 2 years, and then it tapers off. Like height generally on average is 6 to 7 centimeters, and the rate that they start growing in the trunk, which is sort of the high shoulder point to crotch, is about 1 to 2 centimeters. So that's a lot smaller. After 2, pre 2s, their head is still 1/3 to the rest of their body. They've got these big heads. So the sizing sort of does change. You know, if you're kind of comparing, if you would be layering a smaller garment, like there's bigger jumps before 2. So there's just all that taken into account as well.
So it's really hard to give you an exact. You know, like we're getting every day, we're getting dozens and dozens of questions about what size should I buy, but we really have worked hard to add more information to the sizing chart for our garments. And our really strong recommendation is if you just can't decide which garment is which size, like if you're choosing between a 1 and a 2 or a 2 and a 3, you know we have a really, really good returns policy. So when you are just, like Amanda's suggestion of if your child is already kind of 1.5 at the start of winter and you're like, should I get the 1, should I get the 2? just order both. That's what credit cards are for. Order both, try them on at home, and send the one back that you don't want. It's absolutely fine. Just don't wash them beforehand. You know, and you will get a little bit of shrinkage. So take that into account.
Yeah, I think on our test there was about 2 to 3% in shrinkage, which is really amazing for merino. So,
and that's due to the kind of knit and the you know, a lot of that's kind of been taken into consideration. But if you're unsure, just buy both to start with, and then send one back, and you can either have a store credit or you can have a full refund back on your credit card. It'll generally be processed within a couple of days of us receiving it. Depending, we don't do returns on Mondays because we just all hands on deck doing dispatch. But you know, the returns are processed really, really quickly, and that's honestly by far the best way if you're undecided about which size. But so should we just talk through this new?
Yes.
Which one have you got
So
there?
I've got the little how to measure your child
James's
guide.
beautiful handy
really
little
awesome.
diagram.
So we've kind of gone through and said this is the basics of how to measure your child. And tried to help some helpful tips, because actually measuring a child can be really hard. And then so you've got your how to measure, and then you've got the corresponding. So all the measurements. When I work on the specs, we work in half measurements, but we've converted it to full measurements there. So we're talking the whole body,
the whole way around, not just the across.
Because that's how you'll measure your child. It works different in the technical side, but that's okay. We can deal with that. So the measurements are based on the whole.
And so like for the onesie, it's got the height in length, so that's the height of the garment, not the height of your child. So the highest point on the shoulder by the this part up in here, down to the hem, and then you've got your sleeve, the arm length. So again, the reason we've got the diagram is because it differs depending on which garment. So with the raglan sleeve, the arm length goes from right at the top down to the bottom. We've got the hip, which the hip is basically the widest part of your butt, because like with like even though it's based on where your hip bones are, it's really like how fat your butt is. And so if your children are in cloth nappies, measure them with their night nappy on, because again, some people will use 2 boosters and a big fat cloth nappy bum is quite different to people who use 1 slim fitting disposable. And so don't measure your child naked if you want it to fit over some massive amount of padding.
And it depends like how much that feels overnight as well, right?
Exactly, how much wee's going to be in there. So kind of measure your child based on what you think you're gonna want to fit into the garment rather than naked. So that's the hip, and then the chest is pretty much just round under the arms. And so the fleece garments have all got this new awesome measurement. And then the inside leg, do you want to talk about the inside leg? Is that the leg?
So this is inside leg here. So sort of from crotch down to flat. I say flat foot, but so if your child is standing,
flat on the ground.
And sometimes it's easy to do that against the wall because they'll stand up with a straighter posture. Although generally we don't start bending over until adolescence. So, but flat foot across, and then just inside leg there as well. I think one thing to note as well is that with the difference in the fabric, like loyal customers who have bought the old rib, old fleece, will notice a difference. And even just in the way that the garment holds its shape differently, it doesn't hang in the same way because the fabric's different. So
I did find the old ones. My kids' ones stretched lengthways. They stretched a lot, and from not that much wear, and that was one of the things. Like it meant they lasted because they kept growing, but it also meant that as the fabric stretched, it got more stressed,
thinning out, and you're getting saggy knees and
all of that, and then that's where you got the holes.
And
so
if you're layering like a old rib on top of a new one, they'll generally hang lower because once the body goes in, it fills it out. So this is pretty much true to how it will look when it goes on because of the way the fabric holds its shape.
So like if you're comparing it to track pants or a sweatshirt, that you put it on and that's the shape it is. It's not stretching so much around. It's just that it is kind of what it is. Although there is, because it's got the elastane, it has got some stretch, just not as much as it did before.
It's stretched for comfort, not for
extra fit. So that's kind of the sizing information, and I think so we would just really emphasise that our recommendation is to check the measurements. buy 2 sizes if you're not sure, send one back. Don't wash them until you've decided which one. So it does make it very difficult when you send back washed returns, because then we can only sell them in the outlet store, not new. And our recommendation as parents is to do not go up more than one size. We know you want to get good value for money, but it's not going to be a comfortable fit, and you're also going to be putting stress on the garment in areas that it wasn't designed for.
And then it won't last.
And then it won't last because it will pull, or it'll get holes in places that we haven't anticipated. So that's particularly true when you when you buy too big and the crotch is down halfway down the thigh or down at the knee, and then when kids are walking, they're walking and they're really like stretching the seams in ways that they're not designed for. So just buy 2 size or 1 size bigger maximum, and then that's been allowed for with the stretchy cuffs.
And also I'd be wary of folding the fleece over too much, because if you're folding it 3 times, you're getting up to like 900 grams of merino, which is going to be hot cuffs, hot legs. But, so
and you also end up too, if the cuffs are too long, you end up getting extra wear and tear because they're dangling, or the kids are like chewing or playing with them. Not on our beautiful new garment. Okay, so is there any other Merino fleece questions?
No, I think we've kind of covered the main ones that came through around the sizing, looked at the different garments.